In this video, we're going to discuss one of the most gruesome and perhaps most important wars in the history of Westeros. Fought from 129 AC to 131 AC, the Dance of Dragons was a war of succession between Aegon II and his half-sister Rhaenyra over their father Viserys I's throne. This important battle during the Targaryen rule of the Seven Kingdoms was important for the future of the Targaryen house, as it led to the deaths of Aegon and Rhaenyra, and to the eventual crowning of Rhaenyra's son, Aegon III. It is said that no war was ever bloodier or crueler than the Dance of Dragons. It led to the death of many on both sides, and also numerous dragons. Viserys himself wanted Rhaenyra as heir, but Prince Aegon was talked into taking up his father's crown by his mother and small council soon after his father had passed away. Sir Tywin Lannister, a member of the small council, argued that oaths made to Rhaenyra in 105 AC had not been made by them, since this was 24 years earlier, and pushed for Aegon to be named the successor to the throne. Sir Otto Hightower, Hand of the King, and Jasper Wilde, also members of the small council, made other historical arguments against Rhaenyra, backing Aegon as king. When Rhaenyra, the Princess of Dragonstone, learned of these discussions and Aegon's intentions, she fell into a deep rage. She was awaiting the birth of her third child to Prince Daemon, and as soon as the birth was past, she immediately prepared for war against her brother. Both sides had supporters amongst their family and the great lords of the realm. Both sides also had dragons to use for war. This led only to further destruction and death. The realm would feel a war like they never felt before, and it took years to heal. It is said that the first casualty of the Targaryen War was Lord Beesbury, the master of the coin and believer that Rhaenyra should be crowned as the true heir of Viserys. It is not known exactly how Lord Beesbury was murdered, but accounts range from dying in the Black Cells to being thrown out of a window by Sir Criston Cole. Many others died at the beginning of the war, but perhaps none were more egregious than the young princess Lucerys Velaryon, also known as Luke and the son of Rhaenyra, and Jaehaerys, the son and heir of Aegon. Luke eventually died in Storm's End, sent by his mother to gain support from Lord Boros Baratheon. Upon his arrival, Luke met Prince Aemon Targaryen, who despised Luke as it was he who had caused him to lose an eye almost a decade earlier. Prince Aemon, upon his dragon Vhagar, chased down Luke and his young dragon Eryx, as Boros forbid him to take his revenge inside his hall. Both Luke and his dragon died that day, not far from Storm's End, plummeting into the sea. Rhaenyra was devastated by the news of her dead son, and collapsed upon hearing it. She would have her revenge, however, as Prince Daemon sent word to Rhaenyra in Dragonstone upon hearing the news himself, that they would have an eye for an eye, a son for a son. Luke shall be avenged. A brute and a rat catcher were hired by Mysaria, the White Worm, to extract vengeance. Known only as Blood and Cheese in the history of Westeros, these two men were well aware of the tunnels around King's Landing, and easily found their way into the Red Keep. There they trapped Queen Helaena, Aegon II's wife, and her children, offering her a choice of which of her two sons would be killed. The queen offered her own life, but the men were there for only one of her two sons. She eventually named her son Maelor, the youngest and thought to be too young to understand. However, Blood and Cheese killed her oldest son, Prince Jaehaerys, instead, fleeing with the prince's head. Young Prince Maelor may have survived this gruesome scenario, but he did not long survive his brother, and based on many accounts, his fate was much worse. Sir Rickard Thorne of the Kingsguard was sent out to take Maelor away in secret to Oldtown, to secure him away in the High Tower there. On the journey to Bitter Bridge, he was stopped and grabbed by a mob of people. Maelor was torn apart at Bitter Bridge as the men and women which formed the mob tried to claim the infant as their own prize. Bitter Bridge was raided by Lord Hightower for this, and justice was brought to Lady Caswell. The beginning of this massive civil war also saw an assault on Harrenhal, as Prince Daemon led the Blacks' attack. Harrenhal was conquered without bloodshed in 129 AC. Sir Simon Strong yielded to Daemon when his dragon Caraxes landed on the Kingspire Tower. The taking of Harrenhal led to further victories for Rhaenyra and the Blacks at the Burning Mill and Stonehenge, and allowed for an important gathering place for other river lords. The fighting continued, and Sir Criston Cole, fighting for the Greens, wanted to punish the Black Lords who remained loyal to Rhaenyra. Cole was able to take Rosby, Stokeworth, and Duskendale as they fell before him. His attention now turned to Rook's Rest. Lord Staunton, who was at Rook's Rest, had already received word of Cole's arrival at the city. Staunton decided that he would not fight Cole, and instead barricaded himself in his castle, where he immediately sent a raven to Dragonstone, begging for aid and help against the Blacks. Staunton's plea was answered, as Princess Rhaenys arrived at Rook's Rest, along with her dragon Malice, known as the Red Queen. This was not enough to push Cole away, however, as he also brought dragons, splendid ones at that. Aegon II himself arrived to the field of battle, along with his dragon Sunfire, and his brother Aemon One-Eye also came riding Vhagar, thought to be the greatest of all the living dragons. It is said that Princess Rhaenys did not cower from this fight, one where she appeared to be at a disadvantage, and faced them head-on in the field. The battle was gruesome. Vhagar and Aemon were the only ones to come away from it without any injuries. Sunfire was left crippled by the fight, and King Aegon was almost killed during the skirmish, breaking several ribs and his hip, and sustained burns to over half of his body. Some accounts say that his left arm was so burnt by dragonfire that the king's armor he wore melted into his own flesh. Rhaenys herself did not survive the fight. Her body was found several days later along with the corpse of her dragon, but her body was so badly burned that it was left unrecognizable. For the next year, King Aegon led from isolation, healing from his horrible injuries as the war continued to go on. Aemon became protector of the realm, and Prince Regent after Aegon was so badly injured at Rook's Rest. He donned his brother's crown, but he was not referred to as king. This proved to be a devastating turn of events for the Greens, however. Aemon himself was very inexperienced, and many thought him to be too bold to take effective command of the Greens' army, and some say he made many mistakes in the war because of this. Prince Daemon was still in control of Harrenhal, following his previous victory there. Aemon, acting boldly as he was prone to do, planned to attack Harrenhal and take it from his rival, also claiming King's Landing defenders in the process. Aemon arrived at Harrenhal to find the castle empty, much to his pleasure. However, he soon came to realize the real reason for its desertion. While Aemon had been marching for battle on Harrenhal, Daemon had met with Queen Rhaenyra and her dragon riders over King's Landing. The Goldcloaks there, many of them still considering themselves loyal to Daemon, betrayed the officers which Aegon himself put in charge, and surrendered the city with little fighting and less bloodshed that had become accustomed in the massive civil war. However, not everyone's fate was equal on this day. Executions followed as Sir Otto Hightower, Lord Jasper Wilde, the Master of Laws, Lord Rosby, and Lord Stokeworth were beheaded. Queen Dowager Alicent was imprisoned. Aegon and his remaining children, along with Lord Larys Strong, were fortunate to be led out of the castle using secret pathways. It was a great victory for Prince Daemon, and a crushing blow to Aemon and his followers. The entire realm was at war, but it was there at King's Landing where most of the dragons fought and lost their lives. King's Landing had fell to Daemon with little bloodshed, in large part due to his skillful maneuvering. But after the first battle of Tumbleton, unrest quickly spread throughout the city. Tumbleton, not far from the city, had been sacked in the most savage of ways. Thousands of individuals were burned. Thousands more were drowned attempting to swim across the river to safety, and dragons fed among the ruins of the city. After hearing of this gruesome event at Tumbleton at the hands of Lord Hightower, with the help of Prince Daemon and the two betrayers, terror engulfed the city, as the Kingslanders were convinced that they would be next. Rhaenyra's own forces were scattered and running thin, leaving only dragons to defend the city. On the 22nd day of the 5th moon in the year 130 AC, Aemon One-Eye for the Greens and Daemon Targaryen for the Blacks entered the final battle. It was on this day that chaos and death took its toll on King's Landing. Queen Rhaenyra imprisoned Lord Corlys for helping his grandson, Sir Adam Valerian, escape when he was accused of treason. Queen Helena had fallen to her death, impaling herself on the spikes around Maegor's holdfast. Some claim it was a suicide, while others claim she was murdered. Later that night, what has come to be known as the storming of the Dragon Pit occurred. The city burned while a mob of people marched onto the Dragon Pit. Their goal was to kill all of the dragons within, as they believed that the dragons were demons, the spawn of godless Valeria, and the doom of men. A man who came to be known only as the Shepherd announced that the city would only be saved when the city rid itself of all of the dragons, and the people listened. Joffrey Valerian, who was now the Prince of Dragonstone, fell to his death while riding his mother's dragon Syrax to the Dragon Pit. while trying to save his own dragon Tyraxus. Neither of the dragons survived. Other dragons perished that night as well. In total, 5 dragons were killed. Now half of the dragons that began the Civil War were dead, while the war raged on. Soon after this event, Rhaenyra left the city. The end of the Civil War was now approaching. The death of the dragons was a sign of what was to come. Their death did not bring about the end, but the death of the queen and king surely would, along with tens of thousands more. Rhaenyra was the first to die. Her husband, Prince Daemon, fell, leading to House Valyrian to turn against her. Now that the Greens had control of King's Landing, she was poor and forced to sell her crown in order to make it to Dragonstone. Upon her return, she found Aegon II already there, injured with his dying dragon Sunfire. But why was Aegon now in Dragonstone, and not in King's Landing? Munkein's true telling, based on the account of Maester Orwyle, tells us that when King's Landing fell, Larys Strong made sure that the king was taken away to hide. Strong sent him to Dragonstone, correctly believing that Rhaenyra would never think to look for her brother within her own stronghold. For half a year, Aegon recovered from his injuries sustained earlier in battle, in a small and remote fishing village, while Rhaenyra and much of her court were in King's Landing. Sunfire arrived from Crackclaw Point to join Aegon. While there, both were able to recover from their injuries. Sunfire went on to kill the dragon Grey Ghost after healing from his wounds. Aegon found many supporters in Dragonstone, and with their support he was able to conquer the city. This feat took little more than an hour. The only resistance came from Prince Daemon's 14-year-old daughter, Baela Targaryen, and her young dragon Moondancer. Baela was able to get away from the men who were attempting to seize her, and eventually made her way back to Moondancer. As Aegon went to land in the castle courtyard with Sunfire, there Baela and Moondancer soon rose to confront him. The battle was now set. Moondancer was only a young dragon, and was much smaller than Sunfire. This also meant Moondancer was much more swifter and more nimble than the larger dragon. As well, both Baela and Moondancer did not lack courage, and were ready to fight bravely against their larger and more experienced foes. Moondancer swooped, clawed, and snapped at Sunfire, raking and tearing until finally a blast of flame from Sunfire blinded the dragon. The two dragons were tangled together, and fell with both riders still with them. Aegon jumped from Sunfire at the last moment, landing hard and shattering both his legs, while Baela remained with Moondancer until the very end. Baela survived, but was badly injured and unconscious from the fall. Alfred Broom took out his sword to kill Baela, where she laid unconscious, but he was stopped by Sir Marston Waters, who then carried her to the Maester, which saved her life. This led to the final confrontation between Rhaenyra and her half-brother Aegon. Aegon, after years of war, the injuries he sustained earlier, his now shattered legs, and his dying dragon, was ever spiteful towards his sister. In a fit of rage, Aegon fed Rhaenyra to Sunfire, in front of her sole surviving son, Aegon the Younger. This marked the death of the half-year queen, on the 22nd day of the 10th moon of 130 AC. Aegon did not have long to enjoy his victory. Even with Rhaenyra dead and Aegon the Younger in his control, Aegon II still had many enemies throughout the realm who continued to fight against him. These individuals fought as much out of fear of Aegon's rule than they did for Rhaenyra. Either way, they continued to fight. Lord Boros Baratheon marched against the remaining forces that fought for Rhaenyra. Eventually, Lord Boros died at the Battle of the King's Road. The young river lords were near to the city, and Lord Stark was coming down the King's Road himself. It was at this time that Lord Corlys Velaryon advised Aegon to surrender and take the Black. Aegon refused, and planned to give the orders to have his young nephew's ear removed to serve as a warning to Aegon the Younger's supporters. Aegon then went to be carried to his apartments, and was given a cup of wine on the way. When his escort arrived with Aegon, they found the king dead, with blood on his lips. This ended King Aegon II's reign, as he was poisoned by the men who served him. For they were able to see the end of the war, even though he himself was unable. The Dance of Dragons was done. The realm was left to pick itself up from the brutal fighting it saw for the last couple of years. And eventually, a new king was named, Aegon the Younger, now Aegon III, and the history of Westeros marched on with a new Targaryen king. Thank you for watching the video. If you liked it, please leave a like or a comment in the comment section below. As well, subscribe for more Game of Thrones discussions and theories in the near future. Thank you again for watching.